the cloud. So week 6, we do have a special guest this week. Like we had in week 3 with AR and VR, we had a guest from Norway showing us augmented reality, which was very cool. We now have my good friend, Sanjaya Mishra, who has a chapter in the same book with Yayoi. So they are connected together through their writings and through the conference called eLearn back in 2008 in Las Vegas. We went to a Vegas show called The Rev together, which is now disbanded because of COVID. There's a good article in the New Yorker this week on the Rev and all these people who've lost their job due to COVID. But Sanjaya, he's not lost his job. In fact, he's gotten new jobs since 2008. First with UNESCO in Paris. He worked for the second largest university in the world before that. He was the grader, the marker at Indira Gandhi National Open University, what's called IGNU, which has 100,000 people every year in the MBA cohort alone. And he had to grade all those papers. And so, not really, I don't think, he just let them drop on the floor, and if they're weight enough, they fall down and they get an A. But Sanjaya's got many books. He's extremely prolific. Before he became a real important person in the OER space, he was writing books on educational technology. I have a couple of them he sent me. Before he started doing all these books on open education and for the Commonwealth of Learning, he was doing other things that was advancing our field. So he's been a person who has promoted the field of learning with technology for at least 2.5 decades, I want to say. Is that right, Sanjay, or approximately? I getting close. I don't want to tell him how old you are, but he's 28 going on 29. But Sanjay is very interested in policy, very interested in professional development of teachers through technologies, in particular open education. And Sanjay has formed partnerships with Athabasca University in Canada to enable Athabasca and the Commonwealth of Learning to deliver certificates for courses that lead to professional development certificates to teachers around the world, to get them ramped up during COVID and pre-COVID, and she'll do it post-COVID. But he's been very influential in helping rethink professional development of teachers around the world, which actually Hee Jung-an, who's joined us, is interested in that, I'm sure. He's got books related to multimedia and learning, kind of like my guest last semester, Richard Mayer in California. He's been a big promoter of e-learning and blended learning, and now looking at how open educational resources can help one across the lifespan. He's interested in what's called a 60-year curriculum and getting people learning throughout their lifespan. He's offered training in over 30 countries. He's had over 300 publications, written or edited over 300 publications, books, chapters, worked at UNESCO. He's done it all. So his newest and latest, I couldn't print out in color because it would have taken all my printer cartridge toner. So in black and white, we decided last hour, Sanjaya, that this is the wrong title. Open Educational Resources in the Commonwealth 2021. It should be 2022 or 2023 because the book's not out yet. But so I've got many more of his books at home. Maybe Sanjaya will show us if he has them next to him on the desk. But Dr. Sanjaya Mishra is coming to us from Vancouver at the Commonwealth of Learning, which is helping all the former British Commonwealths. So Jamaica and India, maybe the Bahamas, many other dozens and dozens of other countries around the world, help people understand the possible uses of digital technologies to help in their learning situations wherever they are, whether they need low cost, with they have low bandwidth, and getting MOOCs for farmers off the mobile devices with text messages, or farmers in Fiji or wherever they are in the world. Or it might be someone with higher bandwidth in places, other parts of the Commonwealth, whether it's Australia, maybe, and New Zealand and Canada. So Sanjaya, was that correct, or did I get anything wrong?
Thank you very much, Kurt. It's a pleasure to be on your class. I think I had been before in another batch, almost everything correct. You are very kind, so not necessarily everything is correct. People can check about my things online very much, but definitely I have been in the field for learning through the ages.
And happy Valentine's Day, my friend. Now, we've got you Turkish delights here, but if you were only in the room with us, we'd give it to you. So.
Oh, yes. Great. I really look forward to this interaction. So let me know how you want me to proceed. Do you want me to make a small presentation? I have about 15 slides. I want to quickly run through that, and then maybe we'll have question and answer. And my friend Yoi is also here. I'm really happy to see her. And
so maybe we do this. So could you tell people first about what is, just a brief, like a minute each, what is IGNOU? What is the role of UNESCO in all of this, in the open education movement? I talked about UNESCO in my lecture earlier about the 2002 definition. So what is IGNOU? What's the role of UNESCO, and what is the Commonwealth of Learning? Those three things, and then show us your slides, and then we'll ask you questions.
Okay, that's very nice. Indira Gandhi National Open University is probably now the largest open university in the world, while the numbers keep changing between Anadolu University and Indira Gandhi National Open University. The numbers are pretty high in terms of yearly enrollment into courses. And I served there for about 17 years as staff developer. My role was to help other staff members understand distance education, develop right kind of learning materials, particularly learning materials that are suitable for distance learning. And then I moved into multimedia e-learning there and sharpened my understanding while I was working and experimenting with new tools and technologies while teaching other teachers in the university. And that gave me an opportunity to work with several other universities in the country, almost hundreds of them, where distance learning was being used in the conventional universities. So IGNOU is a pretty big university in that sense, really making huge contribution to increasing access to higher education in India and also abroad, because they have centers outside. After that, I moved to
pause for just a second. So you worked for IGNOU in Delhi, is that right?
Yes. And also, I also had the opportunity to work in a regional center of IGNOU for 3 years. So I had the field experience of how the counseling sessions happen, what are the challenges at the last mile challenges students face, and what are the challenges for the teachers to develop media materials, how challenging it is to convert a text materials into a real pedagogical interactive learning materials where you have self-check exercises, good learning outcomes explained. How do you make conversational writing? How do you provide tutor comments and assignments, which is something very interesting that I learned there, and I promote because assignment as tutoring, assignment as a two-way communication tool are some of the things that distance education brings in to conventional education as well. So those are the things I continuously did there.
Before you went onto the Paris and UNESCO, what was your title? You were like a regional director at one point of multimedia, right?
Yeah, no, I served as assistant regional director and then moved to become a lecturer, senior lecturer, moving into becoming an associate professor. When I said, okay, that's enough, let me not move into that ladder and wait for becoming my professorship and move into international development. And that's when I joined UNESCO as its first program specialist on open access to scientific information. This is the second side of OER, open educational resources and open access to scientific information are actually two sides of the same coin, making education and research open to everyone. So I developed an 8-year strategy there, developed training materials, and of course developed a portal on what is called Global Open Access Portal. If you type Global Open Access Portal today on Google, you will still find that portal surviving even after I left there. So, and before I left, I also developed a policy for UNESCO on open access. But that became a reality in 2013 after I left, almost a year after I left. And UNESCO—
It's been that long?
Pardon?
It's been that long since you left Paris? My gosh.
It's almost 9 years I left, 10 years I left. So the UNESCO developed a policy for itself, and it adopted that. I prepared that. I made the advocacy internally, made presentation, convinced people. Then I left. After 1 year, it got accepted by the UNESCO's executive board and the general conference, and it became a policy in 2013 for UNESCO. Since then, everything that UNESCO produces, almost everything that it produces, comes out under a license, Creative Commons license, share alike, CC BY SA license. So I personally consider myself very fortunate to have facilitated that process of change. Remember that it was when the copyright law was started in the countries. It was UNESCO who actually prepared the draft copyright laws, starting from 1952, the Berne Convention. Before the WIPO came into existence, copyright was the domain of UNESCO. And this is the same organization which changed itself from completely copyrighted to an open access in 2013. So it's a huge accomplishment for the organization, and personally for me also being a small part on the whole process of making that transition. Then I moved on to join Commonwealth of Learning's regional office in Delhi.
I just mentioned to you, Sanjay, I did lecture and I talked about CC license. And so they saw that. So all the students, that's what I just wanted to remind them. Those licenses that were in my 5th slide or something that he's chatting, that's what he's describing there, the type of license on the use of the different modules. And you enabled, which license was it, you said?
No, we enabled the open access policy for UNESCO, and they adopt a policy called, the license called CC BY SA. Is share alike licenses. So
okay.
So and then when I moved to the Commonwealth of Learning's Delhi office as director of Commonwealth Educational Media Center for Asia, I was responsible for 8 countries there, having worked there for about 2.5 years, I moved to Vancouver, where I started as education specialist for e-learning, with helping the Commonwealth member states, which are 54 right now, to use ICT in education, open educational resources, blended learning in their teaching and learning practices. So I worked on different projects, platform. I created several platforms here. Like one platform is called Commonwealth Digital Education Leadership Training in Action, which has about 18,000 members in more than 50 countries, and actually about 20 countries are actively using that platform for student and teachers building their digital education competencies. Then recently I developed a platform called Call Commons, where we have short courses, just-in-time learning approach, which builds on the multimedia approach to teaching and learning and distance education, but caters to short learning modules, which can be done from 2 hours to 5 hours. One of the course there is Understanding Open Educational Resources, which has over 17,000 people. So all of you are welcome to explore that platform, and you can learn more about OER on that platform. So
Oh, wait a minute, Sanjay. So 17,000 have taken it or are taking it now?
Yeah, 17,000 have taken the course, and almost about 52 to 54%, it's changing, have completed.
So tell them about MOOC on MOOC.
Yeah, and then one of the things that I do as part of promoting in online learning and capacities to ICT integration is to work on MOOCs as a delivery approach. And I have worked with Athavasca since 2017. And one MOOC is called Introduction to Technology Enabled Learning, where we look at different models like TEAM, then TPAC, SMAR, and all those different models to look at what is the best way to integrate technology in teaching and learning, and help people to also understand OER in that course. We just completed the 10th iteration of that course. Then we also concluded, we started another MOOC called Blended Learning Practice, that the 7th edition of that will be ending in this Friday. So you can see 17 MOOCs have been offered since 2017 with Athavasca on that, and over 25,000 people have completed, enrolled and benefited from that course. Our success rate ranges from 10% to about 35%. And this is because of the what my Athavasca University colleagues call it iMOOC. They call it interactive MOOC. They make it engaging MOOC. It is a little different from the XMOOC and the CMOOC that you read about. We call it iMOOC because we try to make it more interactive and engaging, which is challenging in the MOOCs with large number of students, but we are pretty happy with our success rate so far, and we are now doing a lot of research onto how student engagement results into success on those MOOCs.
So there's a comment in the chat from Hee Jung An from William Patterson, just saying the librarian at William Patterson is really appreciating lots of important data and takeaways, and will help inform the library in supporting faculty in college education, other departments. So, so why don't you present some of that data?
Yes, definitely. Some of the data are pretty clear, and we have made interactive websites, so you can also see some of the data. For example, if you go to Call Commons, on the front page itself, you will see the. I'll share the links probably so that people can don't have to search. So today I actually have not looked into the data a lot. So, but I'm going to speak to the and provide some of the information where you can find the data. For example, all the 10 MOOCs on Introduction to Technology Enabled Learning, we have reports based on the preliminary data that we gathered. We have reports which gives you a sneak peek into who are the people, what they did, what are the kind of reactions they are having. So you can get some sneak peek on those things. I can share some of those links with you, Kurt.
Sounds good. And Sanjaya has chapters in each of my last 2 MOOCs books, so I can also share those with everybody who wants. I'll share them with the class too, yeah. So you said you have 15 slides or something for us?
Yeah, I'll quickly run through that, but I really like interaction rather than making presentations. So I'll quickly run through those slides so that you get a better perspective of open education, and I hope it will complement to all the things that you have already lectured and talked about. So there might be a few repetition, but I think it will complement what you I have already presented. So let me share my slide.
And everyone remember that the Jamboard's up for question. Put your questions up there in that Jamboard for Sanjaya. So we'll come to those after this.
I'm not sure if the right slide is there, but so let me retry again because I'm using.
We had it. We had your slide there. It's smaller, but it wasn't full, but it was, we saw it.
Yeah, it was. Can you see it now? And in the full.
Yes, that's better. Yeah.
In the full presentation mode. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So because of the presentation on the new book that I shared with Kurt, I thought I'll talk about something like status and trends so that we can reflect on some of the data. And I talked about Commonwealth of Learning. Our job is to help Commonwealth governments and institutions use technologies to improve and expand access to quality education and training. We work in 54 countries of the Commonwealth. I want to start with a brief something that you can relate to the importance of open educational resources. I grew up with a childhood riddle, and you might have also experienced this. What is that something which is not reduced when shared? This is the question we used to people used to ask me as a kid. And obviously the answer is known to each one of us, is that the answer is knowledge. If you share knowledge, it never gets reduced. If you have $5, if you share with somebody, you will have less of $5. If you have property, if you share with somebody, it will get reduced. So, but knowledge is something that it's not shared, rather it gets, it increases. But when I went to college, I saw that is not happening. The sharing is not happening. And people are trying to keep information because there is a lot of competition about who gets access to learning materials. Libraries don't have enough books. People who get the books, few copies of the book. I grew up in a small town in India, and the library was not enough. So you won't get books. So if one student gets the book, the student will keep it for a longer time. So the next option for you as a college goer is to buy a book. And you go to the shop in your town, because if you are in a small town, you sometimes have to wait for 2 months to get a book. You have to place an order, and if you are lucky, the book will come in 2 months. So it was very challenging in those days to graduate, to have access to educational resources. And that was my personal experience. And somehow I became a trained librarian, and then moved on to become an education technology person, and started working on OER in 2006, when a platform called wikieducator.org started. I was the 16th member of that platform. And that was my beginning to open education, OER. Before that, of course, I was an open education. I was taken up because I was working in the Open University. I started working in the Open University in 1993. So I was already looking into on open education, Charles Wedemeyer and others, what they talked about open education and all those things. So I wanted to share this thing so that you understand that it was by chance I landed off in the field of open education. But I had the first-hand experience of what is the challenge people facing in the developing world, and the situation. I want to tell you that this personal experience and personal story probably has not changed a lot. If I look at globally, things might have changed in Indian situation a little bit, but in the global scenario, the access challenge continues to persist. There are studies from UNESCO and Commonwealth of Learning where we find that access to learning materials are still big challenge. In Bangladesh, students spend annually about 1,800 Bangladesh taka for books and supplies. In Malaysia, when we did the study in 2017, we found that 76% of learners decide not to buy textbook, even though they know that this is going to impact their studies because the costs are high. This situation is, is similar also in the US. You will be surprised if you have not read some of the things. The cost of textbooks has increased way above the consumer price index in several years, and overall students spend about $1,200 to $1,400 US on textbooks. About 65% of the students in US universities also do not buy textbooks because they are costlier, and they know that not buying textbooks are difficult for them to complete courses. So this is the access challenge that we are working. It's a global challenge for each one of us, whether it is developed country or developing. And the solution is open educational resources, and which started in 1998 with Rice University starting a connection platform called Connection, which is now in a different avatar called Open Text. And then MIT OpenCourseWare came in, and then the 2002 UNESCO's conference on role of OER, role of OpenCourseWare in higher education, where the OER term was coined. And we have marched ahead. In 2019, the UNESCO adopted what is called a recommendation on open educational resources, which actually mandates every country in the world to have a policy or strategy to mainstream open educational resources in their educational system. So that's the whole story about OER so far. But what is OER in defining? You might have already covered those things. But the two important things to remember to identify OER is that either they are in public domain, or they are the learning materials available with an open license. Like Creative Commons license is one type of license, but not all Creative Commons licenses are open. The licenses with ND, which is called non-derivative, are not considered open, which I myself is a critique of that. But OER people talk about that anything that we cannot repurpose is not OER. And important thing is about public domain. And when you look at this word public domain, I think you always should be looking at public domain as a legal word, not as a colloquial talking about public domain. Every website, for example, people say that all website, all information are on the web are public domain. Not necessarily. They are freely available to you, but they are not available freely. They are all copyrighted materials. So public domain means either copyright expired or the author has relinquished the right to the public. So these two things to be remembered to identify what is OER. But the most important part, I always take the philosophy of open as my benchmark to look at what is open or not. So the philosophy of open talks about knowledge is free and should be shared amongst those who need it. It's not for the knowledge for the sake of knowledge. Past knowledge is essential to create new knowledge. If we do not have access to the past knowledge, we will reinvent the wheel. If you want to create new knowledge, then you have to have access to the past knowledge. Every knowledge is a fundamental right kind of thing. So now, and of course, interestingly, it is a fundamental right. If you look at the Declaration of Human Rights, you will find access to knowledge is included in the human rights. And we need to understand about open access. It's not contrary to copyright. It actually builds on copyright. Anyone who creates learning resources will always have copyright of its own, but the author exercises the right to share with an open license. So it is the author's right which is more important than anything else. The whole overall objective is not discrimination. And broadly speaking, that open space allows us to foster a knowledge society. It helps on preserving cultural heritage, and it helps us sharing of knowledge to our next generation kind of things. So these are some of the philosophies that we should understand and internalize if you are working in the field of open educational resources.
Sanjaya, before you go further, I want to point out that your friend, Dr. Sam Nadu, has arrived, and he's sitting in as a guest here. So we should probably say hi to Sam and let Sam give a 10-second introduction. Or Sam, do you want to give a little introduction of yourself so people can see you and hear from you?
Hey, thanks, Kurt. I just wanted to be a fly on the wall, and now you put me on the spot. You know, what am I going to say? Thank you very much for the. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm in awe of your enthusiasm for researchers and research in the field, and then the work that you do, Kurt. You're a champion and a role model for a lot of us. So appreciate your invitation to all of us, not just for me. So I'm grateful to be a part of that. Sanjay is a long-time friend and colleague. We've got stories to tell you about that, but we don't have time for that. So I'm delighted to hear him speak to us as well. I have I've been playing a small role in the field myself. Most notable of all, I suppose, I'm being told most of the time, apart from all the other things that I've done, is being editor of one of the leading journals in the field called Distance Education, which I've edited for more than 20 years. So I guess that's a badge of honor, and I appreciate all the contributions that others have made in that work. But I'm a great fan of the developments in the field, so I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys. Thank you very much, my friend.
Thanks for that. In fact, I was going to say you're the editor for more than 2 decades of Distance. That's exactly what I was going to say. And he's not just a fly on the wall; he's a big fly on the wall. So we're delighted to have you here joining us. And please. So Christian put the link up again in the chat window to the Jamboard. We're going to post questions for Sanjaya to ask him after he presents, and I'm sure you have a couple that you'll ask or want to ask of Sanjaya too. So Sanjaya is about a third of the way through the different slides he was going to present about OER and all the stuff that you already know. Now he might be starting to talk to us a little bit about the new report, but go ahead, Sanjaya. You want to take back over here and talk about OER?
Yeah, and thanks. Welcome, Som, and thank you very much. Som and myself have done a lot of mainstreaming of OER work in the past. The slide currently that is showing is one of those things that I did in India for 4 universities. And this also relates to one of the questions on the Jamboard. In the beginning, I saw that how do you help teachers, where to start, the teachers to start. This is a study that I did with the support of the IDRC Canada, and we were looking at what are the how different activities interact to promote the promotion of OER and use of OER in the university setup for the teachers. So this is just a picture to that the final outcome of looking at a model building kind of stuff. And we find that basically the skills of using, starting with the ICT skills to workload management and finding OER, where it, analyzing the quality of the OER, all those things matters. And on top of that, a positive attitude towards openness and reusing somebody else's material, learning resources are very important on those things. And we worked, in fact, in several universities in the Asia region. We worked with SOM to actually build capacities of novice teachers to become expert in open educational resources, not only contributing materials on open educational resources, but also developing courses for their own institutions and for their own students. And that also led us to, at my stint during SEMCA days, we worked on something called Quality Guidelines for Open Educational Resources, which is called TIPS framework. TEAP stands for Teaching and Learning Processes, Information Materials, Presentation Products and Formats, and System Technology and Technical Aspects. So this has about 30 plus guidelines. This is not a prescriptive things, but it helps people to pick on what are the quality issues they would like to focus on and work on that, and make it clear for others that, okay, we have taken care of these issues. So this is a framework. On the basis of this, also I wrote a chapter on your book, Kurt, on the 2015 book. So that gives more information on this product. And at Call, I did some research on open textbook using David Wiley's scope model, where we found that additional use of open educational resources or test book improved student performance in the test by 5.5%, and also saved about 75 to 88 Eastern Caribbean dollars per course per semester, which actually converted into almost $1 million in Antigua and Barbuda per year. So which was an interesting case study about the use of open educational resources in one single case. So if more and more
Sanjay, just to point out, we had data on our community college in this area called Ivy Tech that's similar. Today, they have an announcement saving like $5 million on textbooks. So it's a similar kind of thing. And I will send the chapter you wrote in the 2015 and 2020 to everybody. I will send Sam's chapters. So Sam has a chapter on Fiji and one with Shranika on what's going on in Sri Lanka. I'll send both of Sam's chapters and both of your chapters to all my students, and to D'Angelo, D'Angelo, if you remind me, I'll send you that. Sam, are you coming to us from Sydney or from Fiji or from Melbourne?
Oh, I'm in Melbourne. I'm based in Melbourne now.
Okay, great.
So Kurt talked about policy development, my role in policy development. We developed a policy guideline with UNESCO for OER, and this is being implemented in several countries, and several institutions are making use of it with call support or without call support as well. But from call, we have helped about 30 institutions in the last 5 years. And several countries have used the tool to develop their OER policies. Some have been adopted, some have been developed and not have been adopted, and they are in the process. I also helped several institutions to develop courses. Call has over 100 open courses available on its repository, of which about 1/3 have been developed with my involvement. And some of the key, and these courses are primarily on advanced ICT skills development. And for example, it's a mobile app development or web application development. These were developed with several open universities in Pakistan, India, Malaysia, Nigeria, Tanzania, and Sri Lanka.
Yes, can you go back, Sanjay? Can you go back real quick? Can you, they might not know what any of those acronyms are. I know NOUN, it relates to Nigeria. What are each of those?
Alama Iqbal Open University, AIOU. IGNOU is Indira Gandhi National Open University. NOUN is National Open University of Nigeria. OUM is Open University Malaysia.
And UST as well.
Yeah.
And
on Open University of Tanzania and Open University of Sri Lanka. These are some of the courses, and of course, we developed about 17 courses when you were there, Som, in USP, but those was not currently available on our platform. But I helped the policy development in USP with Som, and Som took that policy to implement those policy, developing about 17 courses when he was there as the Pro Vice Chancellor.
Yeah.
So moving forward,
we do have a student from Sri Lanka with us named Tuli. So Tuli's probably paying real attention to all this, right, Tuli?
Great. During the COVID period with the Open Educational Resources Foundation, we started an initiative called OER for #OER for COVID. And we actually supported several institutions and individuals as a consortium to actually leverage the power of OER-based e-learning in the process. And one of the findings during that process was people need curated learning resources. People really don't like to spend a lot of time and efforts in finding and creating, but if curated learning resources are there, they make use of it. And therefore, open textbook is definitely a better approach to look at moving forward, because that becomes curated and available at one place. And then we started looking at can we do just-in-time support? And we started with this platform called callcommons.org, which currently have 5 courses, and by June we'll have about another 5 courses. And you know, Cort, that one of the those would be based on your Take Variety book. So those things are under development. Currently, we have about 20,000 learners on this platform, and over 25,000 certificates have been issued in less than 1 year, because this platform was launched in July 2021. And coming to this, some slides or cards. I will share this presentation. Of course, you have the whole publication on OER in the Commonwealth 2021. We collected data towards the late 2021. And what are important thing is that we find that OER is getting more and more used in the classroom. So that's one takeaway. Over 22% people are now adapting and remixing OER, which is the most important part. People are using as is, but they are not remixing and reusing and not adding more value to it. But now about 22% are doing it. If you look at Rogers diffusion theory, then we are probably on the tipping point of OER right now. So those are the interesting part. And what happened, we asked them, what is the influence of OER on teaching and learning? And the biggest influence that we see is also happening on creating an environment of sharing in the institution. And to me, that's the most important part of when I grew up as a graduate student. The sharing was not there. Now I see that sharing is improving, and OER is a contributing factor to that. And when you asked about why do they share, they provide the typical responses about the improving quality, saving money, and so on and so forth. But interestingly, during the COVID, what we found that the use or uptake of OER has increased over 50%, and that's the most important. But challenges still remain, and people still have problem of understanding the licenses, still have lack of ICT skills, and lack of real understanding of copyright, of what they can do and what they cannot do are still problems. So I see that my role at Commonwealth Learning, and many of us who are promoting OER, our job is not going to be easy, but it will be something continuing for us to promote the use of better understanding of OER, better understanding of copyright, and creating of open educational resources using accessible ways of doing things. So to find out tools and technologies that will make OER accessible for people with disabilities and people who have different challenges. So with that, I would stop here and look for questions and responses. And these are some of this screenshots of some of the publications that I have done in the last few years at Commonwealth of Learning. Thank you very much.
So when you share those slides, could you please share some of the links to the OER previous reports on OER, so my students can benefit from them as well. I know they can look them up, but it'd be really easy to do it. And I will say, this weekend I was hard at work on the course that and the book that will go with, or the resources that will be part of that initiative that you mentioned. So you want to repeat what that initiative is? It's to teach people how to motivate online.
Yes, that is on the Call Commons platform. We are adding new courses, and one of those courses is motivating online learners. So we are using the Take Variety book, which is copyright of Bonk and our colleague from New Zealand, who is currently helping us to reformat that book and make a small portion of that book available as an OER. Because the original Take Variety book is a copyrighted book, but Kurt has made it widely available. Several 100,000 people have 500,000. Kurt, how many it is? Downloads have already.
The counter broke when I got 275. After it's probably well over 500,000.
Yeah.
You know, the story behind that, if Sam hasn't heard it, it was I was in the Philippines, in Manila, when Melinda Bandelaria brought me, who you guys all know, Melinda. And I looked around, and they had, my publisher sent 2 copies of my book to the conference, to 1,000 people conference, and charged twice as much money. So I got up for my keynote and I just said, my next book will be free. So that's, so you have to have the free and open access as your mission or your goal to make an impact, and this is a way to make an impact out there. And you can do it in a small way, just having an article that's available, or in a larger way, like a course or a book or something else. Or a program.
So we are making a short version of that book that people can spend about 4 hours to 5 hours to understand and get some tricks to motivate their online learners. And that will be available probably towards June this year on the Call Commons platform. And anyone who can register from anywhere in the world and enroll in the course, self-enroll in the course, watch the videos, work on the quizzes, and practice as many times they want to do it. And when they are ready, they think, okay, I have understood some of the things, and they will go and take a test, which is again a set of quizzes, and they complete the quizzes, they get an 80% score on that, they get a certificate for themselves to print online. And it could be treated as a badge. You can think it as like a badge, but it will be a call certificate kind of stuff, so that you feel that you have accomplished something in 4 hours, 5 hours kind of the stuff. But essentially, as I see the course currently being developed, I see that there are a lot of tricks of how do you motivate online learners in a live class, how to keep the learners engaged. So there are a lot of tricks. So some of those things people can learn from those things and that course and apply on their daily life.
So Sanjaya, we have to get to the 6 questions or more from my students. And so I only promised you an hour, but looks like we might extend a few minutes beyond the hour, if that's okay. Who wants to jump in first with their Jamboard question or with any other thing that has come up? Go ahead, Kim.
You actually answered my question. I was the first one that was on the Jamboard. I'm interested, I'm a subject matter expert, and I'm interested in creating OER for my courses. One of the reasons why I haven't yet is because I'm a little bit unsure of where to start. It just, to me, at least as a faculty who has a lot of other things in the pot, in the fire, so to speak, I get a little bit nervous about starting such a really big endeavor. So I just
tell them your subject matter area.
My subject matter is animal science, and my real focus is reproduction of farm animals. So that's where I really focus in on. And we have the largest department at our university where I teach. So, we have over 500 students in our program. So I'm coming at it from that perspective, not instructional design, so to speak. That's not my background. And none of my other degrees are in education. So if you could shed some light on how folks like myself and my colleagues can go about creating OER, that would be great.
But she's in the SUNY system. Which SUNY
Yeah.
are you in?
I'm at the smallest SUNY, SUNY Cobleskill. We're smaller than the ESF program.
In the US, the SUNY network, they have a OER network as well, as I understand, and observe their work. Two important things, rather three important things from what you explained, which is better than what is there in the question, because I now get the context. So the first important thing is that the field that you are working in is very, very important. If you look at the OER space, you will find very little OER in the space of agriculture and animal husbandry area. So you are in a very niche area, and I would encourage you to do more OER work on that. At Call, we helped some of those people in India we created egg MOOCs, and within that egg MOOCs, there are certain courses which are on animal husbandry areas, like reproduction as such. So I will send the link to Kurt, so you might get access to some of those things to see what is happening. Having said that, the second part is much easier as an individual level, because if you have some basic ICT competencies, and if you are creating original materials yourself as a subject matter expert, you just add a open license to it and release it as OER. You need a space where you can want to share, but there are different repositories where you can share your work, starting from OER Commons to there are many other places you can do that easily yourself. So it all needs a video camera to capture something, or to write something or make a presentation yourself. You are the subject expert, so you know the quality of things, and you need to ensure those things and share those things. Many a times teachers face that, is it good enough to share? Once that hurdle is covered, that's not a problem at all. The biggest problem, and the third important point comes, if you are trying to do things as an institution, the problem starts there. Because if the institution do not have a policy to use open educational resources, and they don't give you credit for doing something in that area of work, teachers face that challenging to do it. So if you are trying to do as an individual, I think you are you are the master of your own things to do it, release it. You only need, if you are adapting somebody else's work or repurposing it for your students, or creating a derivative, you need better understanding of the licenses, so that you are not creating something which is not compatible with the CC licenses. Because the CC license, all the 6 CC licenses, they don't talk to each other. Some of them talk to each other, some of others do not talk to each other. So you need to remix your derivative carefully. That is the only caution you need to take. Otherwise, you are in the best area to work on. It's a niche area. Go ahead, please.
Give me your comments.
I'm definitely game. I've thought about this for an actual dissertation, because like you said, there's really nothing out there. I think that there's 2 things, and I have some severe, as a subject matter expert, I have some severe problems with at least one of them, where my students have actually said, because I've given it to them and I've said, okay, I want you guys to critique this at the end of the course. It's kind of like their summative valuation. And some of them have picked it up. They're like, this is wrong. This is not what we learned, and we talk about why. So yeah, I guess I just needed that encouragement. So I thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Yayoi, I know you have a question and you've been wanting to talk to Sanjaya, your friend Sanjaya. So, and I know Halima has a question. She put on her camera, so she's next. And if anyone raises their hand, tell them, okay, so Angela will be after Halima. So Yayoi, go ahead.
Good to see you, Sanjay, after so many years. So a few years back, I worked at Kyushu University and developed MOOCs. And listening to your talk, I wondered whether you include MOOCs in your OER when you provide them for free open access. Do you include MOOCs in OER?
That's a very important question, and everybody need to look at that carefully. MOOCs are openly available, but they are not OER necessarily. To become an OER, they need to have an open license, or it is the creator of that MOOC makes it relinquish the copyright. So neither of these things are happening in many of the MOOCs. But the MOOCs that we at Commonwealth of Learning do, all MOOCs are OER. So what we do is that the MOOCs may be available on an online platform, and it might not have access after the particular period, but we create an equivalent of a course of that, make it a PDF, links to the videos, and put it in our repositories so that anyone can have access to that alternative of that course material. So for us, all the MOOCs are OER. So if somebody is doing a MOOC from Commonwealth of Learning and simultaneously copying those content and going to offer it to his or her own students, they are free to do it as long as they credit the call MOOC as the original creator of those content. Because and of course they release the content in the same license, what we call CC BY SA. For call, we also follow the same license. So if they are following that license, then they are free to make use of our resources. So not all MOOCs are OER.
Thank you very much.
Yayoi, is your university in Tokyo, or was that university somewhere else in Japan?
I used to work at Kyushu University, far away from Tokyo, but 1,000 kilometers away.
Oh my God.
And what about now? Where are you? If people want to
I'm
visit
now
you?
in Tokyo and teaching media communication. And next semester, I'm going to teach open education.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So can you recommend any good material for my students?
The best material, you should take Scott Bonk's book.
So visit Yayoi. She wants people to visit Tokyo soon. And yeah, maybe we can work out something together, Yayoi. I'm sure we'll do something if you're teaching open education. So we should definitely do something global in the fall. It's next semester, next fall, right? In the fall or in the summer.
Our school starts in April, not September. Anyway, good to see you, Sanjay, here.
Yeah, great. You can find a lot of materials on our OSS. I'll send you a mail separately because on our repository, we have lots of material that you can make use of on your course as readings for your students, particularly on that open education field.
Yeah. And
So,
how long does
Yayoi,
it usually take to get the certificate?
I didn't get you, Yoi.
How long does it take to get the certificate?
Oh,
My students want.
Oh, you could integrate that as an assignment because that course will take about 2 hours. So it could be a small assignment in the course.
That's nice.
your students can get a certificate. So I'll be on television in Japan sometime this spring with Tony Bates and others at the Open U of Japan. Filmed us in the fall. So let me know if you see me on TV. Halima has the next question. Halima.
Thank you so much for coming, Dr. Mishra. I am very curious about how you would personally define an open university. What makes studying at an open university different from studying in an online degree program at a traditional university?
Yeah, that's interesting question. See, the open universities and today's online are probably doing the same things. Okay, it's all because things started at different time due to technological things. The open universities are basically universities that are more open to what Lord Crowther said, open to ideas, open to people, open to courses, open to methods. But what is more important is that the universities are basically using the foundational principle of open education, which is about giving students the choice of courses. They can remix different courses to create their own basket of course program, what they want to study, where they want to study, when they want to study. And those kind of flexible learning opportunities are provided by open universities. Earlier, when it started, the first open university is 69 and so on and so forth. Today in Asia itself, we have in Commonwealth, we have about 33 open universities in Asia, in the Commonwealth. The situation is changing, and one of the things that the universities have been doing from the beginning is the technology mediated education. The open universities use media of the time to remain contemporary and to increase access to quality education. So whether it started with print as the media, or then or radio or television, then the satellite television, then interactive satellite networks, then the interactive multimedia, then of course online learning, and what Jim Taylor said, fourth generation, fifth generation learning, and flexible learning things. So different generations happened. Today, what we can say is that online learning is the new generation of distance education. Okay, so there is not much difference in that sense. So if you look at UK Open University today, their name is Open University. They are flexible enough, but they're primarily a digital open university. So there is a lot of blurring happening, but not everywhere. If you look at in Tanzania, for example, or India, for example, still the predominant mode is printed learning materials supplemented with audio and video education. So it's all about the context, where what is happening, how it is happening, and then it's all about what's in a name. But ultimately, they are doing the same thing.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that answer.
So D'Angelo is doing a dissertation on open education, or wants to. He hasn't gotten approval yet. He wrote his literature review and just sent it to me 2 days ago. So D'Angelo wants to jump in and have you help him with this dissertation. D'Angelo.
Hi, thank you for joining us today. I have a question. I was surprised to see the perception of OER in the call report that only 32% disagreed or strongly disagreed with the question with OER being questionable. However, the literature in the US and Canada points that OER, the perception of OER is either the same or better in most cases. What do you think accounts for this difference in quality of perceptions between the US and the areas that the COL oversees?
D'Angelo, tell him where you're from, what you do.
I'm currently in Okinawa, Japan. I'm a event coordinator, academic event coordinator for the Pacific region for the Department of Defense Educational Activity.
Yeah, thank you for that question. In fact, that means you have read the report carefully, and I'm happy about that. The perception is changing though. That is in relation to quality of open educational resources. Okay, and people are not confident about the quality of open educational resources as much as in the US and other areas. Here, basically, the perception is about looking into all the materials that are available on websites. Say, for example, people are coming from that. So when they have looked at materials on the website, they normally think that not everything, anybody can put anything on the website and it's not quality. Okay. So when they look at open educational resources, if you look at the people how many people are really understanding the OER, but how many people are responding to the survey? So there is always that disconnect. Okay. So those people who really do not understand the affordances of OER, that OER brings in the possibility of improving quality in itself, is not really understood clearly. And then therefore people have that still question the quality of OER. And it is going to be the same for some time. For example, even the quality of textbooks, or for example, people normally in the Commonwealth would question that if something is prepared by somebody else or something is available free of cost, they would ask the same question. Okay, so it's a journey that is important to talk about OER. More and more people need to understand about OER. There is an awareness level has gone up to 80 plus, but understanding about OER and its implications, particularly about the licenses, if you see, they are still the challenges. And this response is coming in that context. So I take it in that way, the current situation. And if you look at even the US understanding, it's not that different. It's similar to that. Maybe a percentage difference will be there. Say, for example, during the COVID, there was a report on OER which came out, and only about 45% people said that OER can help them. Whereas in our survey, over 50% actually said that they have used OER during COVID. So it's kind of similar, 45 and 50%, those kind of things. I hope I responded.
Thank you. And I have a follow-up question. The Open Education Research Hub provides open access to their data sets and research instruments, such as survey questions, etc., on OER research. Does the COL also do the same?
Yeah, we really don't have a open data policy yet. But if you need anything for particularly the survey tools and other things, we can share with you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, who else has got a question on the Jamboard that haven't asked? So how you look like you have put something on the Jamboard. You want to ask it?
No, actually, I haven't put anything on a Jamboard, but no, that's just interesting to see, like the scale. Maybe I say like the scale of the education. Like you say, no, I just wonder, do you think like the OER or the open education is much needed in developing countries versus developed countries?
No, what I said is that the problem is more in developing countries, but it is also equally challenging in the developed countries. Like I gave the example of the US, where students are spending $1,200 to $1,400 US per year on textbooks, and about 65% are not buying textbooks because they are costlier. They cannot afford the textbooks. And the average price of textbooks have grown way above the consumer price index in the US itself. So it will be unfair to say that it is not a problem in the developed country, and it's only a problem in developing country. Definitely the challenge is more in the developing part of the world where I work most of the time.
So normally Nelson jumps in and so does Christian. So I'm assuming one or both of those guys have a question.
Nelson, do you? Because I do. Well, I just want to thank you for coming and offering your really cool experiences that you've had. And but one of the biggest questions I've seen in your conversation, as well as the conversation before you came in, was about the OERs that are out there and curation of those OERs. Can you talk about different ways that you can imagine those OERs can be curated in an effective way?
And Sanjay, I'll have part two to that. People are interested, is there a counseling system? Is there a AI-based advisory system built within AI, within OER? Is there an AI-based, not only curation, and to catalog what OER you have found and used? Do people find different curation tools to be valuable, and then also advisory tools?
I think the second part is very important to highlight, is that a lot of research is currently going on having AI recommender systems for OER. Recently there is a Vancouver-based company which has released a huge set of data on open access resources, which can be used for a recommender system. But and there are many research going on, but I haven't yet seen a robust recommender system for open educational resources as such. I myself have dabbled with that, but there are a lot of challenges in building a useful AI-based recommender system for OER because of not just language issues, but which is getting ready, but at the cognitive load of the content, the user's perspectives, user dimension, and so on and so forth. But I'm sure a lot of as research is happening right now, in next 2 to 3 years, if you will have more robust systems available on this field. The first question that you asked is about the curation issue, which I think is most important. As teachers, we need to focus on curation as such. Use of OER is fine, and it gives you access to some good quality materials for you as teacher and your students as well. But as teachers, what we do, education is contextual. So if we are not making that educational resource from another context and not remixing and not curating it for our students and not adding value from our side, it may not be appropriate for our learners. So what the affordances of OER brings in is that you can repurpose an existing material, curate those things, put wraparound activities for your learners, and contextualize those for their learning. So what happens in the process, if we do, as teachers, we do that curation and put around activities to contextualize the learning process, then we are adding value in that process and improving the quality of teaching and learning in that sense. So that curation is very important point. I'm very happy that you touched upon that. There are several tools that are available to do that. And what we started, when we started doing initially, we started with dabbling with Word files to curate those things and use TASL about providing the title, author, source link as the attribution for that things that you are using. We did that with Som, who is attending this. Initially, we started doing a project in Wawasan University in Malaysia, and we did that approach. Then we moved on to using Moodle as the platform where teaching learning happens, and the courses are pieces taken from different things, sources, and cobbled together into a course with learning outcomes, activities, assignment, and so on and so forth. Of course, continuing the attribution process. So we started doing that. Now what is happening, more and more people are trying to develop open textbooks by curating from different sources or engaging authors to write chapters of learning resources and putting together open textbooks. One platform is called Pressbook, which is an open source software to use and create that. But having said that, I would not forget one very preliminary and early work that was done by Kurt himself when he did created a wiki book in one of his class, where students generated learning materials and created wiki books project. And that was one of the earliest example of open pedagogy, which is a new term people use these days, or open educational practices these days. So there are different ways. Wiki is one, LMS is one, Pressbook is one, or doing normal Word file is the easiest thing to do it.
So Pressbooks we have here, and students can use Pressbooks for their final assignment. This was the class in 2007, one of my 2 classes that created the wiki book, and you can all add to that. It still exists, and they can add. So I almost misheard you. I thought you said one of the ugliest, but it was one of the earliest. I think you said early, not ugliest. So we have time for one more question, maybe a comment from someone, a question and a comment. Anyone like to ask the final question here?
Yeah. I do have a question. And first of all, thank you for your talk today. I really appreciate it. What do you feel are the biggest challenges in applying OERs in K-12 public education, and how can those obstacles be addressed?
Oh my God. Okay. I don't see much challenges in the K-12. The reason is a lot of K-12 materials are already available in the open space, and particularly in the US. If you go to, there is a network called K-12 itself. Okay, and they produce AP level courses for kindergarten to 12 level OER on biology, chemistry, physics, English, you can name everything. If you go to OER Commons, you find those things already available. The biggest challenge, if at all I want to say, is that actually use in the class. How can teachers use those materials which are available? Integrating OER in teaching and learning is probably the challenge. And this is something that we saw challenge as in higher education in our project in Bhavasana Open University when we did with Som Naidu. That was the title of our project, integrating OER in teaching and learning, and using OER-based e-learning as the solution for that. So the biggest challenge could be, how can we prepare teachers to use a huge amount of K-12 OER resources available to, and I remember the exact thing, CK12. If you type CK12 on Google, you'll find the network with huge amount of resources.
So it looks like Sam Nadu has the final question or comment. As Nelson wants to give a thank you to that.
Oh, thanks, Kurt. I just wanted to piggyback on the comment that Sanjaya just made in the last 30 seconds. The biggest challenge is mindsets of people, of teachers, and integration of open educational resources in teaching and learning. The fundamental question that I think each one of us should ask is why. Let's say, for example, you have a copyrighted set of materials, a textbook, and you have another which is open educational resources. Of which one would you choose? There has to be a pedagogical reason over and above the cost factor. And the pedagogical reason should drive the adoption and use of that open educational resource. So unless the teacher begins to think about learning and teaching differently in terms of the affordances of what an open educational resource can do to empower learners, to engage with that subject matter, then the question is, why bother? You know, if a person can buy the textbook, then it's a non-issue. But that's not the point. The point is to be able to allow students and teachers to engage with the subject matter content in ways that are different, in ways that are more enhanced and more powerful than it would have been if you had been using copyrighted material. I mean, that's the fundamental point. So unless teachers understand that, unless you develop strategies to allow learners and teachers themselves to engage with that content, you are not really making much progress. And I think that is the main challenge that both Sanjay and I have found out in so many places throughout the Commonwealth that we've been working. Thanks. I just wanted to emphasize that point, Sanjay.
Great, Tom. Thank you.
Anyone want to add to Sam's point there? As it was a critical one, and we need to, the pedagogical side is the key aspect. And, you know, if you took my fall class on instructional strategies, you heard me in this room, in this very room, talk about that quite a bit. Does anyone have any final comment here? Or
Kurt, maybe
anyone want?
Maybe you can talk a little bit about your Silver Lining for Learning guest. Was it Asma that was talking about mindset of instructors? You can always find something negative, but it's not, that's always going to be there, but it's going for the positives in the work that you're doing.
So I can say this. Yeah, we're on episode 93 or so. We started when I started running 696 days ago. Sam's a much better runner than I am, much faster than I am, and I wish I had his speed and endurance, but I still go. But we also started the same day I started running, we started Silver Lining for Learning. And this last week, we had people from Gaza, and we had one person, Asma. If you watch the episode, she is probably the most amazing person I've met in my career as an educator in terms of what challenges she faced and how she's overcome them. She's a shining light for the world, actually, and so creative and so bright, and what her message is extremely powerful. So if you go to Silver Lining, watch the last show. That being said, we have had several international shows from Costa Rica, from Nepal, from Myanmar, and other places. Coming up in our show 100, our 100th episode, I think it will be on April 2nd. We'll have the Taking It Global from Calgary, people in Canada there with you, Sanjay. Taking It Global, one of their centers actually will be talking to us about their global education projects. We'll also have World Savvy, maybe the week before, coming to us from Minneapolis. They have a certificate program to create teachers who are more savvy to create global curricula. We also may have an author of a recent book on global education. I'm going to running a series on global education shows in March and April and maybe early May. So if that's of interest to all of you, do tap into Silver Lining, because the past few shows, I have not run the last couple. I ran too many in a row. The last couple of shows have been phenomenal. And literally the people from Harvard doing work, cataloging for UNESCO 75 success stories during early COVID. That show, that was 2 or 3 weeks ago, was again phenomenal. We had guests from South America and then folks from Harvard creating UNESCO compiled short stories of change, which is very needed to create inspiring stories to the world. So thanks for prompting that, Christian. Again, I can't overemphasize. I think Hee-Jung, you looked at the Pakistan one, or the one from Gaza, from Palestine as well, and liked it as well. Did you want to comment, Hee-Jung, or not? No. Okay.
And I don't have questions, but I just want to mention something. It's not that I want to protect my teachers, but at some time they want us use OER and including YouTube videos, but they're all blocked many times. So administrator actually encourage them not to use them. So that's just one of the reasons. I just want to mention that, because I have been working with the teachers for many years here, and then that's one of their complaints. So what we need to really do is really encourage administrator to have open mind to use OERs. Otherwise, a teacher cannot really do what they want to do. even though they want to. Maybe teachers are very
Sanjay.
different, but a lot of school that I work with is kind of, they have that kind of constraint.
She's at William Patterson University in New Jersey, in suburban New Jersey. So comment?
But
Yeah,
Hee-jung?
I think over 50% of the states in the United States, I don't have the exact number, but last time I checked, it was 27 states. They have policies to promote OER. So wherever there is state policy to promote OER, I believe such things should not be happening, and the administrators should be more concerned about adopting to the state policies to promote OER, and not necessarily that though that all YouTube material are OER, and only a small section of YouTube material are OER. So the teachers, this is a little challenging, but teachers can work out with administrators or IT managers in the schools to provide access to curated list of videos which will not be blocked. So such arrangements can be done.
Hee-jung, I may have misspoke. You were going to say something. It may be a suburban school, but a lot of teachers teach in inner city, Trenton maybe, and other parts of New Jersey. Is that right?
Newark and Patterson. And in fact, a lot of schools in suburban have a lot of freedom. But unfortunately, a lot of schools who are controlled by state, right? They don't have freedom to use what they want to do. That's why I just want to point out that. In fact, in my opinion, it gotta be opposite, but they cannot do a lot of creative work because of a lot of constraint that they really have to carry out, including a lot of STEAM. I'm doing a lot of STEAM work, art integration. They cannot do so because they have to really increase this test score, for example. So they do a lot of like paper-based, drill-based. So they cannot do a lot of what they want to do.
So we don't want to end with that comment, because we want to end it on a positive tone. And so Kim wants to. So thank you, Hee-jung. It's a very important point that we're all restricted and our hands are tied oftentimes by state law and state policy that the teachers have to, and state testing and assessment. But Kim, you want to have the final word?
Yes. So all of us as instructional designers and educational researchers, reach out to your subject matter experts and get them to try a little bit. Teachers are not the enemy. We want to do really great things for our students. People don't go into education for the money. They would go into industry for that. So all you have to do is just reach out and just say, hey, I'm really interested in your topic. Do you want to maybe collaborate? I want to possibly do this with you. Can you be my subject matter expert and partner with them? And it would be amazing to see what could possibly happen with that cooperation and collaboration between the two.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sam and Sanjay and Yayoi, who came in from a distance, and D'Angelo from Okinawa. We've got some diversity here with Canada and Okinawa and Tokyo and Melbourne and other places around the world. So thank you, everyone. And so give Sanjay a big round of applause, please. And I will stop the recording at this point and just ask my students to hang around for a few minutes.